morning. Everything's fuzzy, but it may be the light coming through the window. Okay. So it is September 30th. It was 52 degrees out there this morning, so it was nice. I mean, it was really nice. I very much enjoyed it. This is the last day of September, which means it's the last day of the month of expectancy. And I just glanced ahead, and October is the month of fulfillment. So we will see what that looks like tomorrow. But for today, September 30th, I'm pretty sure it's Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday. And our title is To Think is to Create, which is kind of interesting because I was in another group last night, and that's what they were talking about, is our thought is creative. So to think is to create, and the Bible quote is, "With God all things are possible," and that is from Matthew 19:26. All right. The final creativeness of the universe is the movement of intelligence within and upon itself. This intelligence already exists at the center of our own being. It really is our own being, and the very power of imagination that we exercise is this intelligence functioning at the level of our comprehension of it. The mind within us is the mind of God. Since our mind is some part of the mind of God, there is a place within us where we are universal, where we use universal power. To affirm the presence of good in our life is to use the power within us for the creation of that good we affirm. We have this possibility within us, for the mind within us is God. We must accept our freedom, announce our liberty, and proclaim our divine birthright. Whatever we believe to be true about God, we must declare to be the truth about ourselves. We must know that the power within us, which is God, is establishing right action in our life. In this way, we will gain dominion and exercise authority. I live in the world of my own creation. Knowing that thinking is creative opens the doorway to wisdom and power. That doorway is already within me. Somewhere within me, the mind of God reveals this truth, that I am born free, and that the will of God for me is one of goodness, truth, and beauty. I rejoice that at last I am awakening to this realization of truth. I have the power to use the mind within me in any good way I see fit. I use my authority to create beauty, peace, and joy. All right. I guess the sun's just hit that angle. It's creating the glare. Okay. I don't want to make you guys nauseated with me shifting it around. So we will just see the divine light in the corner. All right. So the first thing that comes to mind is in here, like dead center in the middle of it, he says, whatever we believe to be true about God, we must declare to be the truth about ourselves. So the first thing that you want to deal with is, what do you believe to be the truth about God? What do you believe about God? What is your belief about God? Because pretty much everything else in that reading hinges on what you believe about God. Do you believe that God is life? Do you believe that God is good? Do you believe that God is beauty? Do you believe that God is truth? Or do you believe something else? So what do you believe about God? What do you feel in your heart of hearts is true about God? Because what you believe in your heart is true about God is what you believe about yourself in this teaching. because we believe that we're divine splinters of God. We believe that we use the power of the mind of God because it's what is at the center of our own being. And so it would be a good idea to get really clear about your feelings about God. In the group I was in last night, that was one of the questions is, how has your idea of God changed since from the beginning of the spiritual journey to now? And it was interesting because everybody in it had been raised Catholic, but we all had different ideas because we had been raised different kinds of Catholic. We had an Irish Catholic, a Latina Catholic, a military Catholic, that would be me. And we all had different ideas about God and, what the church, the Catholic churches teach. Catholic churches, for the most part, are very uniform. You can walk into any Catholic church anywhere in the world, and it's going to be the same service. It's going to be the same readings. It's going to be the same homily, whatever word you want to use there. But the extracurricular around it is all different. So even just the four of us had such a wide idea about God. And that's that. But I also think that my love of Joseph Campbell and my love of world mythology also informed my ideas of God. When you look across the world and see all of the various differences, different ways that people see God, and some of them are beautiful and some of them are terrifying. And that's how we show up in the world. It's like people who have a beautiful idea of God are easier than people who have a terrifying idea of God. They just walk through the world differently. So when you are working on expectancy, maybe it would be a good idea to get really clear about your idea of God. And I would suggest using any medium that you choose. If you write, if you sing, if you dance, if you paint, if you draw out your idea of God. Give yourself a visual representation of God, what your experience of what you believe God is. Get really clear on what you believe. Not what you have been taught, but what you believe. Because there's a difference. All right. So the final creativeness of the universe is a movement of intelligence within and upon itself. And that's almost a Bible quote. Something about moving upon the face of the waters in Genesis. This intelligence already exists at the center of our own being. If Ernest has told us this once, he has told us this 100 times. It is really our own being, and the very power of imagination that we exercise is this intelligence functioning at the level of our comprehension of it. So it is our imagination functioning at the level of our comprehension. So how much do you understand about God? Which is why I started with, what do you believe about God? How strong is your imagination? How fantastic is your imagination? Why not imagine? Why not go all the way in your imagination? Why not? Imagine, because that's what we do. We imagine a world. I mean, John Lennon wrote a song about imagine. And that, imagine if we could live together in peace. Why not imagine that? Because that imagination, with our faith wrapped around it, is the creative power of the universe. The very power of imagination that we exercise is this intelligence functioning at the level of our comprehension of it. The mind within us is the mind of God. So our mind is some part of the mind of God. It is not the whole mind of God, because we are small, limited mortal beings. But we use that mind. We just use the amount of it that we can. And there go again, how big is your cup of acceptance? How much of that mind are you willing to use? How much of that mind are you willing to access? I believe that all of the solutions are up there in that mind, up there, out there, in there, wherever. And that's my limited mortal comprehension. But am I willing to accept that I have access to all of those solutions? Some days, yes. And honestly, some days, no. Some days my cup of acceptance is huge, and some days my cup of acceptance is a thimble. And those are the days that I go back and I do my work so that I can increase the size of my cup of acceptance. And that is just human experience. So some days you're going to have a cup of acceptance that's a thimble. And those days when you realize your cup of acceptance is a thimble, then you go, let me work on that. And you go into prayer, or if your cup of acceptance is a thimble and you just have nowhere to go with that, then you call somebody. You call your practitioner, you call your prayer partner, you call your minister, or email or Zoom or whatever, and work on your cup of acceptance. Okay, since our mind is some part of the mind of God, there is a place within us where we are universal. We have access to everything in the universe, somewhere within us, where we use universal power. And that's one of the reasons why I keep encouraging you to buy this book, so you can see where he's capitalizing. Because he says there is a place within us where we are universal, but he uses the little u. And then he says where we use universal power, and that's where he's using the big U and the big P. There is a part within us, there is somewhere within us where we have access to that universal power. To affirm the presence of good in our life is to use the power within us for the creation of that good that we affirm. So we affirm the good, and then we use the power within us to affirm the good. It's like, I know there is good. What is it that Emma says? There's good out there, and you ought to have it. Well, that's what Ernest just said. Well, there's good out there, and you can use it. So affirm that you know that there is good. Affirm that you know that there's good out there, and that there's good in here. And then use it. We have this possibility within us. For the mind within us is God. He's just going to beat this one into the ground. We must accept our freedom, announce our liberty, and proclaim our divine birthright. Accept our freedom, announce our liberty, and proclaim our divine birthright. We have to accept that we have the right to use this power. I mean, I've used the word birthright. I hadn't seen him use it before, which probably I just don't remember. But there he does. Our divine birthright is the ability to use this mind and the ability to use this creative power. How big is our cup of acceptance? Whatever we believe to be true about God, we must declare to be true about ourselves. What do you believe about God? And if you believe that God is petty and judgmental and penalizing and all of that, do you believe that about yourself? And if you do, please come and talk to us. Let us suggest books and speakers, and let's change that. Because God is good. God is beauty. God is truth. God is love. God is gratitude. And when you can accept all of those things about God and accept all of those things about yourself, then there is nothing that you cannot do. Go read Emma. I love Emma. There is good, and you ought to have it. We must know that the power within us, which is God, is establishing right action in our life. So we must know that the power within us, which is God, is establishing right action in life. We believe that the action that we take, if we are taking it in the idea of what God is, which is love, truth, beauty, kindness, compassion, life, then we're going to take the right action. In this way, we will gain dominion and exercise authority. What do we have dominion over? Ourselves. What do we have authority over? Ourselves. And in our interactions with people. It's all about relationships, people. I live in the world of my own creation, which always reminds me of, I live in my own little world, but it's okay, they know me here. You live in the world you create. What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about God? That's the world you live in. Do you live in a wonderful, beautiful world most of the time, or do you live in a very scary world? I say most of the time because, like I said, we are in relationship. We are going to interact with people, and we are going to interact with people who have a different idea about God. And sometimes that's not the most wonderful. But when you do that, remember that you are holding your space for you. You are also holding space for them. Holding space for them to recognize that they are a beloved child of God as well. Knowing that thinking is creative opens the doorway to wisdom and power. Knowing that thinking is creative. Knowing that you have the power to change your world by changing the way that you are thinking. Changing the way that you think about God. Changing the way you think about yourself. Changing the way you think about other people. Allow people gentle passage through your thoughts. I got that one from Jesse. I forget who he got it from. That doorway is already within me. Somewhere within me, the mind of God reveals this truth, that I was born free, and that the will of God for me is one of goodness, truth, and beauty. So, you were born free. And the will of God for you is one of goodness, truth, and beauty. I rejoice that at last I am awakening to this realization of truth. I have the power to use the mind within me in any good way I see fit. And I like how he says that. He says, I have the power to use the mind, capital N, within me in any good way I see fit. If you are trending towards life, you are good. I use my authority to create beauty, peace, and joy. What do I see fit? I see fit to create beauty, peace, and joy, because that is who I believe that God is. Beauty, peace, and joy. All right, so what is our mission today? I think our mission today is to realize that we are born free and to recognize the will of God for us is goodness, truth, and beauty. And then to rejoice in that knowledge. All right. So we are moving from the month of expectancy into the month of fulfillment tomorrow. I can't believe it's already October. I don't even know. All right. But I'm going to encourage you, as I always do something loving for yourself, do something kind for yourself, do something compassionate for yourself, whatever that looks like to you. Do something that engages your mind and your body. The weather right now is fantastic. So I always encourage you, open your windows, get some fresh air in, get some fresh perspective. Allow the windows of your soul to open. And allow the breath of heaven to remind you that you live in heaven now. To remind you that you are a beloved child of Spirit, in whom Spirit is well pleased. Now and always. There has never been a time that God has not loved you. There will never be a time that God will not love you. There is nothing that you can do to change that love. I promise. I promise. Because that is what God is. God is love. And since you are a child of God, since you carry that divine spark of God within you, that means that you too are love. And when we act from that place of divine love, there's nothing we can't do. Anything is possible. With God or with love, anything is possible. All right, so I'm going to move into the process of my day. It being Wednesday, I'm going to remind you that Monty and Shirley are doing a book study with the reading The Living Science of Mind. I believe that starts at 6, so check your emails if you want that link. It's one of my, I have so many favorite books, but I love The Living Science of Mind. It's a lot like this one where it's a collection. Just a little longer. So, and then Reverend David will be out and around you with the daily guides around 5, and I will be back with you at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Have a fantastic day, beloveds.